We're back to Benghazi. Let's play hardball. Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Philadelphia. Let me start tonight with this. A newly disclosed email from White House Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes has reignited the Benghazi firestorm on the hard right. Senator Lindsey Graham is calling the White House scumbags. Congressman Darrell Issa is comparing President Obama to President Nixon. There's only one problem. The Republican Party's freak out today once again doesn't square with reality. Here's what got things going. In that email, Rhodes refers to a prep call with Susan Rice ahead of her appearances on those 5 Sunday talk shows the weekend after the tragedy. Rhodes calls one of the goals for those interviews should be, quote, to underscore that these protests are rooted in an internet video and not a broader failure of policy. Well, how is that different from what we now know actually happened? According to the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee report from early this year, in fact, in January, quote, some intelligence suggests the attacks were likely put together in short order, following that day's violent protests in Cairo against an inflammatory video. What's more, the first draft of the CIA's talking points for Susan Rice paints an even clearer picture. It says, quote, we believe, based on currently available information, that the attacks of Benghazi were spontaneously inspired by the protests at the U.S. Embassy in Cairo. Michael Steer was chairman of the Republican National Committee, and David Corn is the Washington bureau chief with Mother Jones. Both are MSNBC political analysts. Michael, I'm curious to hear what you think here, because it seems to me I've been watching this thing and trying to keep the file cabinet in my head, which is filled with the facts coming out of that Senate Bipartisan Intelligence Committee report, which said, yes, this was a copycat operation against the facility in Benghazi, spurred or triggered by what was going on around the Middle East, but especially in Cairo. And the issue in the situation in Cairo was triggered, they believe, by this inflammatory video coming out of California making fun of Islam. That seems to be what this memo points to by Ben Rhodes. Say that. Say, in other words, what we now believe to have been the case. What's the problem? What's the smoking gun?
Well, because I think, Chris, there's still a lot that needs to be answered here with Benghazi. And you know, I've not been one of these, red flag raising guys on Benghazi. I think that the initial handling of this by the party, over politicizing it, in fact, diminishes any real investigatory effort to find out exactly what the facts on the ground are. To listen to to Carney stand in the White House and talk about, oh, we still want to bring whoever did this to justice, it's almost ludicrous at this point. So when you have something like this email come and be revealed through FOIA, and it just, again, contextualizes the initial concerns that a lot of people, not just Republicans, had about the handling of Benghazi and what led up to some of the decision-making on the ground. Now, I think it's a legitimate tool and point of interest to discuss.
David Corn, I guess the question comes down to when are we going to get a complete picture? But so far, it seems to me that what this new memo shows coming out from Ben Rhodes, that the Republicans are calling a smoking gun, and it's caused people like Lindsey Graham, who's normally sane, to be calling people scumbags, isn't any different really in substance from what we got from this bipartisan report of the Senate Intelligence Committee way back in January.
Short answer, no. Here are all the documents, all the new documents that just came out. If and I would encourage Michael, our good friend, to read the smoking gun memo, as Fox News and others like to call it.
I've read it.
There is nothing in that memo that changes anything that we know, and it is quite clear that the one line they pull out of it, the protests being inspired by the video, that Ben Rhodes is clearly referring to all the protests that went on that week in Tunisia, in Sudan, in Cairo, in Egypt, in Yemen. And so that's what he's talking about, the big picture. And so there's nothing to this memo. Now, I do think there are still questions unanswered about Benghazi, about the CIA annex there, and about what our capabilities were beforehand. And the State Department Review Board looked into this and said that there were reasons why more should have been done before the fact. And all the great things that should be looked at so that we never lose another public servant like Ambassador Christopher Stevens and the 3 other Americans who perished with him. But for the Republicans again and again today to get out there and to make this stuff up is really sacrilegious to the memory of Christopher Stevens.
Well, David, with all due respect, I mean, that's just a load of crap. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not making... yeah, it is. We're not making anything up. We're going on what this... No, we're not. We're looking at the same stuff you're looking at. Okay, yeah, it may be a matter of interpretation or opinion, but the White House, in handling this thing from the very beginning, has botched it. And in this memo, this particular paragraph that Chris started this segment off with, you can interpret one of two ways. It could be, you know, hey, we got to get out there and put this story about, this is just about the video, and Susan, just make sure you tell everybody that we're not failing on our policy, that we're doing this the right way, or it could be as, you know, as nice and easily packaged as David just put it. But we don't know.
Look, I want to go back to, I want to go, look. There's no doubt, gentlemen, that you're right, Michael. The White House has boxed this up. Why didn't they put out this memo?
Thank you.
With all the earlier stuff they put out? Why did they let rolling disclosure occur, which is what I've said for years in politics and looking at it? The one way to lose your credibility is to have information leak out point by point by point at your convenience. Well, this certainly wasn't their convenience. It was a FOIA thing, a freedom of information thing. But it makes the White House once again play defense. But I want to get back to you, Michael, on this question. If you listen to the language of the Senate Bipartisan Committee report, they came out last January, this past January. Some intelligence suggests the attacks were likely put together in short order. Another thing, relatively spontaneous, following that day's violent protests in Cairo against an inflammatory video. This is just what Susan Rice said on Meet the Press with David Gregory.
But
Copycat from Cairo, in that case, probably caused by the anger over the video.
But
how's that a dishonest statement, presentation by Susan Rice?
I'm not saying it is a dishonest statement. I'm not saying it is a dishonest statement by the White House. The White House is putting out a statement.
Every Republican is, though.
Well, let me just finish the point. But to the point you just made, Chris, you know, we don't know what we don't know yet about Benghazi. Yeah, okay. In the light that's been shown, so I mean, you just admitted that this rolling effect.
But but Michael, that'd be great. But your side already is calling the White House scumbags, saying they've lied, saying, listen, let me finish,
David,
saying it's a scandal.
Let me finish my point, David. Don't give me the look. I'm not into the name calling crazy. We don't need the name call here. But the bottom line is
name calling. They're saying Darrell and others have been out there and have said that it's a cover-up. You want to take this?
Let's watch what the Republicans are saying, not what Michael's saying. Michael, here's what some of your confreres are saying. The Rhodes email has set off an absolute GOP freakout, we would argue. As I mentioned, Senator Lindsey Graham's calling the White House a name you don't generally hear from a grown-up senator. Here's Graham.
Some guy said this about me yesterday on the left, that the only reason I cared about this was because I've got 6 Tea Party opponents. Well, if that's true, I'm the biggest scumbag in America. The scumbags are the people in the White House who lied about this.
And Republican Congressman Darrell Issa held another round of oversight hearings today on this matter, where he compared President Obama to Richard Nixon. Here's Congressman Issa.
It comes in a week in which the American people have learned that you cannot believe what the White House says, you cannot believe what the spokespeople say, and you cannot believe what the president says. And the facts are coming out that in fact, this administration has knowingly withheld documents pursuant to congressional subpoenas in violation of any reasonable transparency or historic precedent, at least since Richard Milhouse Nixon.
Well, David Corn, it does seem to me you're right. The language coming out of these people, it couldn't be more horrendous, given the fact there's hardly even a nuance of difference between what we're learning now and what we learned a long time ago about the tragedy that occurred in Benghazi. By the way, would we please all remember that Ambassador Chris Stevens was a grown-up, a serious professional of sound mind. He decided to go out there to that risky facility that night. He made that decision, which ambassadors have to make. It turned out to be a horrific situation he walked into. But the idea that somebody else should have been covering for him, that someone else should have had the army there waiting to defend him, I think has gotten a little ridiculous. Your thoughts, David?
I don't think it's gotten ridiculous, Chris. I don't think it's gotten ridiculous. I think it's a responsibility of the President of the United States and his administration to protect those ambassadors who do go into harm's way willingly and with full knowledge. So I'm not going to let the administration off the hook on that.
Chris Stevens was going out to a facility alongside a CIA facility in the middle of the night some weekend? How would he know that?
How would he know what?
Michael?
I didn't hear your question.
How would the president even know he was going on that trip out there to Benghazi?
How would the president know that specific event? We do have emails and correspondence between the ambassador and the State Department. If the president doesn't know, at least his Secretary of State and her department should know what his needs are on the ground and what is required. Okay, what is required to protect the United States ambassador in a place like Benghazi? Come on, guys, this isn't rocket science, and you know daggone well if the shoe were on the other foot, you would be screaming holy hell about how a Bush administration failed to protect one of his ambassadors. Come on.
You're acting as if there have been no investigations. There have been several, including some led by Republicans in the House, other than Darrell Issa. And so a lot of this stuff has been looked at.
And David, did we just not get an email released in the last 24 hours or week that wasn't a part of the initial discussion that we're all now talking about?
No,
how do we know what's going to be released tomorrow or next week?
You can keep saying we don't know what's really out there.
I guess I'm trying to be Michael. I guess I'm trying to look at this reasonably. I understand the politics of this completely on both sides. But this argument, it seems to me, trying to apply this to what happens in any war zone, which is this was a war zone. This country was not being governed at the time. You go into Afghanistan, you go into Syria today, you go into Iraq. There are places in the world where it's dangerous to go to, where people get killed all the time in surprise ambushes. It happens all the time. Roadside bombings, improvised explosive devices. We live in a world of unpredictability and horror, and the idea that one of these incidents would be blown up as the most important issue of upcoming presidential elections for Kingdom Come, to me, is out of proportion. Anyway, thank you, Michael Steele.
All right,
and I wish I got to meet Chris Stevens, because everybody thought he was a great guy. David Corn, of course, thank you for joining us. Coming up, Bill Clinton was doing more yesterday than just burnishing his own image. With his speech about income inequality, he was also guarding Hillary's left from attacks from the Elizabeth Warren wing of the party. Plus, the big muddle that has become the Republican race for the White House. Three guys, Jeb Bush, Rand Paul, and Mike Huckabee, are all bunched together with each representing a different faction of the party. This is going to be fun. And that botched execution down in Oklahoma has renewed debate over the death penalty. It's not about sympathizing with convicted murderers. I think it's more about those rare cases of where a truly innocent person is on death row. And how do you justify that? Finally, let me finish tonight with this bracing new struggle between the Clintons and the Democratic left over the 2016 primary fight. This is Hardball, the place for politics.
Some things you have to squeeze to make sure they're soft. Other things you don't. Charmin Ultra Soft is so soft, you can actually see the softness with our comfort cushions. Plus, you can use up to 4 times less.
Enjoy the go with Charmin Ultra Soft.
I procrastinated on buying a car for over a year because I knew it would be a scary process.